Welcome back to the channel, folks. This is Jason, host of Fighting Words Financial, and today I wanted to give you guys a little update on Nano Dimension. I'm doing this kind of off the cuff today, so this may be a little bit unfocused. You guys know me, sometimes I can't stay on topic, but I wanted to talk about Nano Dimension in a couple of different dimensions here. The article that I read, it's on the Real Money website, and I'll post the link to this in the comments below. But in the last 4 months, Nano Dimension has raised about $1 billion in cash. That's the big story. When it comes to their business, meaning how many of their printers they've sold, how much ink they've sold, there isn't really a story there. That picture really has not been improving that much, and they only did about $7 million in sales last quarter. In my mind, the fundamentals of this company really don't justify the amount of money they've been able to raise or the current price of their stock. That's not to say that you're looking at a valuation based on the future growth of this company, and maybe that's justified. But currently, if I go back and look at the trailing indicators here, there's no justification for how much money their company is worth at this point. And there really isn't a lot of news to lead us to believe that this company should be worth this much. All right. Now, I'm not saying anything about their technology. I think their technology is absolutely fantastic. But there's a lot of companies with great technologies that don't make it, or they get acquired at an early stage, and that technology ends up being offered by some larger company, and their story kind of gets buried in the acquisition, right? So the author of this article, though, makes a pretty valid point where he talks about the last time that valuations of stocks were this high was the dot-com era, and most of those companies didn't survive, and he thinks that they didn't survive in some part because they didn't do what Nano Dimension is doing right now, which is go back to secondary markets over and over and over and hit them up. So Nano Dimension has gone back and raised capital by issuing stock 7 times in the last 2 months. That could be seen as a worrying sign. It really could. But I'm going to give you my perspective here, and that perspective is that from a small business owner. When the pandemic started, I sat down with my business partners and I talked to them, and I got a little pushback from them on this. And I made this case, and I'm sure I said it nicer than I'm saying it now because they eventually agreed with me. But I said the one thing that you have to count on here is the power of human stupidity. I've looked at the history of pandemics, and the history of pandemics is really about the history of failure of policy. And it doesn't really matter what governments do or mandates they make or policies they have. They all seem to fail because people simply won't pay attention to them, or everyone thinks they're a doctor or something and they know better, and those policies end up failing, and the pandemic lasts for anywhere from 12 to 18 months. And I sat down with my partners. I'm like, we need to have a plan that essentially bets on the fact that none of the government plans are going to work. And that's what we started off doing. Nano Dimension did the same thing. If you look at their behavior, what they did in June of 2020, when their revenues dropped down to only $500,000 for Q2 of 2020, they only had $500,000 of revenue. And in June, they essentially stopped all sales efforts. All the money that they were putting into sales and marketing, they basically stopped that, and they started shoring up their cash position right away. They borrowed some money right away, put that in the bank. At this point, right now, they have over $1 billion in the bank. They created this giant runway. They know that once the pandemic ends, the business environment goes back to something like it was before, something like normal. It's never going to be completely like it was before. But they need to have a long runway, and your cash, your operating cash, is the runway you need to hit takeoff speed. Now, I've done the same thing. My business have done the same thing. We've been hoarding cash, knowing that our business was going to suffer greatly for this, and we were going to slowly ramp back up, getting closer and closer to profitability, or at least to growth. And that strategy so far is paying off. I don't think anyone expected this to last as long, other than people like us who sat down and studied the history of government response to pandemics. I think Nano Dimension must have done something in that same manner. Their current price, you cannot by any means justify their current price based on their current fundamentals. Even though their sales have improved since their lowest quarter, which was second quarter of 2020, they still only have $7 million of sales. This doesn't justify the amount of money that they've been able to raise or the price of their stock, especially when they're still losing $1.53 per share. So you really have to think about this if you are going to invest. And I need to disclose here that I do own 400 shares of the stock. I'm not going to be adding any more shares in the near future until I see a more return, a return to rationality at this point, or I see their sales numbers start to pick up. I know that Nano Dimension's burn rate right now is somewhere between $3 and $5 billion per quarter, above what they're actually bringing in revenue. So with $1 billion of cash on hand, there's no risk of them running out of money anytime soon. So they're in good shape right now when it comes to that post-pandemic runway. But I think there's still a lot of risk involved in this stock. Like, despite having this huge pile of cash on the balance sheet, management has shown a willingness to go back to the well over and over again every time the shares pop in order to snap up some more money. So now the CEO of the company has gone on the air and talked about being interested in mergers and acquisitions. Now, I'm one of those guys that likes to look into things when people talk and look into phrases when people say things and say, is there another way that this could be interpreted? And when it comes to him, there is definitely another way that this could be interpreted. He didn't really specify whether or not Nano Dimension was interested in the one executing the acquisitions or merging with another company, or if he was really looking to be a target for acquisition. And if you think about it, the technology that they have, the large amount of cash they have on their balance sheet, and the fact that the burn rate is pretty low, might actually make them a pretty attractive takeover option for a larger player in the industry who wants to get into a new and exciting technology. So my bottom line on this stock basically is that if you're already in it, I don't think there's a reason to sell. If you are not in this stock, I would be cautious about how much you're adding at this point, especially at this price point. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a bit of a decline, or at least a stall in the run-up at this point, right? I think the stock really benefited from the Cathie Wood effect, meaning as soon as Cathie Wood bought this stock, tons of other people poured into the stock. I'm wondering if that tendency is actually going to start affecting the way she makes purchases in the future, where maybe she's counting on the Cathie Wood effect when she makes an investment. I don't know. But anyhow, I'm counseling a little caution when it comes to Nano Dimension. I'm not saying it's a bad technology. It's not. But I don't have any idea really what the plans are for Nano Dimension other than this long runway that they're creating right here, and other than the fact that may be looking for a target to acquire, or they may be looking to be acquired. So anyway, be reasonable, be skeptical, and be cautious when it comes to approaching Nano Dimension. Anyway, those are just my thoughts for the day, guys. You can tell me how wrong you think I am. If I missed a bunch of sales of their machines or something like that, you can let me know. But they only did $7 million of business last quarter, and I don't think that the current price of their stock is justified. That's my bottom line. Tell me how wrong you think I am in the comments below. I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you very much.